Budget Day 2. I'm Trish Tidd, Chair of the Kingston Municipal Budget Committee. I'd like to open the 2023 public hearing for the review of the warrant articles and revenue estimates. Also opening our regular meeting to discuss any items that may come up. So to start off the meeting, let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started, I'd like to just make some introductions again. I do want to thank all the members of the Municipal Budget Committee for their work this year. Myself, I have Vice Chair Rick Russman, Secretary Stacy Dion, Claudia Diaz, Gary Finnerty, Nick Hofer, John Cranberg, Anne Marie Roth, and Shaw Tilton. Also introducing the members of the Select Board: Richard Wilson, Kevin St. James, Electra Alessio, Christopher Basha, and Charles Hart. And also a big thank you out to Paul Mahoney, our new Finance Director, for all of their help in getting us the numbers that we needed to develop this year's budget. So if you were with us or watched the replay of last week's meeting, you saw us read through each line of the proposed 2023 budget and make recommendations. It's been a long road this fall to get to the recommended budget. And I'd like to share a little bit of detail about that process before we get started on the warrant articles today. We started with a budget that had an overall increase well over 10%. We were facing a number of concerns of significant increases in costs to things like gas, oil, and especially the electric charges. We had a newly negotiated sanitation contract, and we have new department heads, and all departments were trying to make sure that our town employees are paid fair salaries in line with our neighboring towns. Each member of the budget committee met with at least 2 departments to go over their individual budgets and make recommendations for where we could cut based on previous versus actual numbers. I'd like to thank Stacy. She gathered data to determine and trend the electric usage for all town buildings and then extrapolate what we could really expect in real time for next year at the negotiated rate for the town. This allowed us to actually cut some of those electric costs in the budget. We also asked our 3 largest departments, that's police, fire, and highway, to make significant cuts, again, just last month, in order to bring the overall budget closer to the inflation rate, without compromising essential services. All 3 department heads stepped up to this challenge, and I want to thank them for working with us. Increases in the budget are mostly due to salaries, the electric, oil, propane, and sanitation costs. The increases in electric, oil, propane, and sanitation, unfortunately, are unavoidable. Salary increases are fair and necessary to keep our safety departments fully staffed. As many of you hopefully saw Chief Johnson's post a few weeks ago, Kingston was named the 2nd and 3rd safest town to live in on 2 different surveys. That's something that we can really do. Keeping salaries where they are, or where they should be, ensures that we have staffing necessary to keep our roads plowed, salted, and safe, someone knowledgeable to come with the ambulance if you have a medical emergency, and well-trained officers to be able to respond and de-escalate scary situations. The proposed budget that we've developed is a conservative budget that covers anticipated costs and services as best as can be estimated. The cost of many supplies have increased, just like you probably noticed in your own shopping. The default budget does not account for these increased costs. The default budget would not account for these increased costs of things like tires, lumber, gloves, paint, salt, or asphalt. So today we'll be looking at the warrant articles. The first 11 articles are the planning board articles. The planning board has already accepted those at the planning board meeting, and they do not have any financial impact on the town. So therefore, no vote is required by either the Municipal Budget Committee or the Board of Selectmen. So we'll be starting with Article 13 and reading through each of those articles and then opening it for any discussion. All right. So let's get started. All right, so I will start with Article 13. Shall the town of Kingston raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles or other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $7,981,318. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $7,404,896, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Kingston or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013, 10, and 16 to make up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Estimated tax impact is $5.91 per thousand. Estimated tax impact of the default budget is $5.30 per thousand.
I just want to make one comment on the estimated tax impact. According to your policy sheet, that estimated tax impact should be $5.97, not $5.91.
Good question about that. If you look at one of the right. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. If you look at if $100,000 adds 12 cents to the tax rate, and you multiply that out of $7,900,000, right? That doesn't come up the same.
Did you get this? Because they added the offset revenue.
Okay. So you've got the added revenue in there.
And then we take a vote on each one? Okay.
I refer to this one.
Yeah, do you want to move to the...
Right here, so what is it?
At one of the selectmen's meetings, I heard that the town was going to be paying the school resource officer, but in the budget, it's not budgeted. So I just wondered where it was.
It was added to the staffing line.
Just regular staffing?
Yeah, the overall staff.
But under the police department?
Correct.
Okay.
It's offset by two.
Oh, that I know, but I just wanted to, because I'm like, okay, there are lines for it, but there's no money in it. So I'm like, is it just budgeted, or how did that work out? Okay, and then another question I had was based on the COLA, and I'm nothing against the COLA, but there are several departments that have salary lines in it, mostly secretarial, that don't have a cost of living. Was that done intentionally, or just omitted by mistake? That nobody thought about it?
Which one?
Like HDC, Budget Committee, some of those salary lines don't have cost of living associated with it, and I didn't know if that was on purpose or whether it was just because they're small, just got lost in the shuffle.
No.
HDC. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that would be like the secretary.
I know who they are, but I'm just wondering why they're not getting the cost of living when everybody else is. And I didn't know if it was an intentional thing that you guys talked about it and there's a reason why they're not, or whether they just got lost in the shuffle. So I just thought I'd bring it up and see what, if they're small, people might not know.
So those aren't salaried, they get a flat fee of payment
Yeah,
for that.
yeah.
And they didn't ask us for an increase.
That was my point. I didn't know if the department at the time didn't know, because they came in first, that a cost of living was being provided across the board, and whether they sort of got lost in the shuffle because they didn't know about it, or...
Yeah, I don't think it's a lost in the shuffle, as
I
per
never come
se,
back. That's
in
what you
that.
guys, I it just meant that they didn't know to ask for it, and. Yeah.
So the cost of living, each department didn't ask for that. That was a town-wide based on salaried employees.
So your secretary for the budget committee gets a salary, and HTC gets a salary, and it just, I just thought I'd bring it up, because.
Yeah.
Along that same line, the question would be, maybe the chief can answer this. I guess you give a per diem or something, that people will stay overnight. Do they get it? Are they getting a call? Yes. Okay, so, but they get a set amount for that, like the secretary did, people that you have a salary, for the budget, or whatever, the same thing. I think you get a point.
I don't think anyone did it intentionally, I think it just was one of those that they came in early, probably wasn't even thought about, and then when everyone went to vote, nobody thought about it.
So the salaries are managed at the department level as opposed to at the town level. So what the increases that you see in one department, they might be based on history or when they've had raises in the past.
This is all cost, this is the only thing I'm asking about is cost of living, not salary.
Understood. The cost of living here is applied to the salary. So cost of living along with salary raises and so on, it gets treated at the department level. The department needs to-
So you guys automatically, then the budget committee had the discussion not to put in for cost of living. So that's okay.
Cost of living wasn't something that we were able to change. That was determined, the percentage of cost of living was determined by the select board.
You would have put in the budget according to what the gentleman just told me, and you didn't put in for cost of living.
And I'm sure everyone was not finding suitable, so we'll make one of those things and I'm sure we'll take that into consideration.
And I think the guidance that was given at the time is I think we all agreed upon a number of cost of living, and we asked the department heads to come back with budget proposals at that cost of living rate. So I don't think the budget committee put in all those numbers.
I mean, this gentleman seemed to indicate
No,
that.
so I thought they convened to all the department heads that everyone had agreed that we wanted to see 4%, and that I think it was incumbent on the department heads to bring the budget back with that.
It just appears that it's mostly clerical that didn't get it, so I just want to ask a question.
There's no problem that the people didn't get it. I guess that's the case. Only the people with problem.
That seems like what may have happened.
And each department decided that.
I think when we had that, one of those joint workshops that we did, we came up with that 4%, and that's the message we conveyed to all the department heads, that that's what we wanted to see come forward in the budget, so we had an apples to apples cost of living across all departments.
I just thought I'd bring it to your attention, what you do with it is up to you. And you know that there are a couple items in here that, the way the budget is set up, and I know that there was a lot of transition, but you have some lines in your budget that shows that money went back in, which isn't possible. So your numbers aren't 100% right. Like, for mortgage, there's 2,700 came back. It's not your numbers, it's gonna mess up your DRA paperwork. So you'll see that, I'm sure you've already talked about it.
What are you referring to?
Well, like in welfare, money was added back into the welfare department, and it says it's because of the lien release. Money can't be added back into the department, that would be under budget. This was before Paula, it was during the transition, and there's money in planning that, there's money for recording fees. They're not showing up at all that were done, but it's not in the budget, so it's been a big transition year with different people. I just want to tell you that when you go to do your DRA paperwork, you might want to check some of those lines to make sure that you can hit the right numbers. Nothing to do with the budget.
Yeah, absolutely, we'll double check
And
those.
it was certainly, again, 3 different people were working numbers, and it's totally understandable, but you can't have money go back in.
Before we get completely past here, you're talking about the clerical staff that may have not had it, if there's obviously, I don't think, there's no opportunity to change that today, but could that be, if somebody brought it forward in the deliberative session, could that be modified if somebody did some
That
research?
should be modified. I'm just bringing.
I think it's an important oversight to mention that. I mean, that's such a small pool of money for those staff because they're not full-time staff. It may be a minor adjustment to the budget, but
It's not going to affect what you're voting, it's just going to affect what last year's numbers were, which can be changed anytime they fix it before you send your paperwork in, and it's mainly going to be more important when you're going to be audited. So I just wanted to bring it up because there were a couple I personally knew about. So I noticed it was like on 3 or 4 lines that
Okay,
it's not
if
possible.
we wanted to add them, we would want to add it and get an approximate number, because the Article 13, the warrant article, would be impacted and affected, because it would go on slightly.
Yeah, and so, but I think somebody could bring that forward at the deliberative session and modify that, correct?
Yes, the other
Yeah, it would affect some of those other numbers too on the benefits, possibly.
The only thing is really going to impact is how much you had to spend last year. And it'll only be off by a couple thousand, I think, so I don't think it's going to impact any of the work.
It's right.
The only thing it's going to impact is the paperwork you sent to the DRA. And I only have one other question, I think. And I certainly understand why electricity costs are going up and all of that nature. I just wondered, most of them were going up like in the 30% average. And I just wondered what was happening with the fire department, that they were going up 50% and 100% over what they spent last year.
So last year was a different building, so.
The highway department?
Oh, I thought it was the fire.
I understand fire, they have a new building now, so this is.
Okay, I thought you said fire, sorry.
That's okay. So I just wondered if there was some new project, some new thing going on. Last year they spent about 4,000, they're going up to 9, which is 50% over the budget. And everybody else is in the 30s.
Okay.
So I just wondered why highway was 50. You know, I'm retired, I didn't watch everything.
Yeah.
Stacy did the trending.
So we did a trend analysis on the usage of each month, and then took out a median, and we calculated that median for, projected it for what the use would be for next year, based on the new electrical rate.
Yep, that's all I want to know is how it came about.
Well, I think we could probably, if we wanted to do that right now, wait till the winter session. If we're gonna take any kind of vote on the money, we could actually include these other people in the COLA. It just seems like a bit unfair that some people will get it and other people won't. I mean, it's kind of like being a little bit pregnant, either you are or you're not. So, I mean, either we're giving out a COLA or we're not, and if we are, then it seems a little unfair that we shouldn't do it for all our employees.
The COLA does go to all employees, it's just how it's put in the budget is a little different. Department heads included it already, and then some of the other departments put it in there to be added.
Isn't it more like a contract position?
No,
It's a contract, they're doing it for a fee, and the fee is in the budget, and that's why we include COLA, because they're not a town employee, it's contracted, those minutes.
Well, isn't that what the firefighters are doing when they stay overnight? It's kind of like a contract thing where they're getting paid a certain amount, but they are getting a COLA.
Well, I think on the fire end, that was because all the other towns were going up, and he was just trying to be competitive with the other towns. But for the HDC and the budget committee, the secretarial taking the minutes, it's kind of like just a contract. Someone's just doing it, and that's their fee. You know, and I would assume whoever's in charge of the department asking people if they're still comfortable with it.
You know what, on an $8 million budget, I think we can find another $1,000 to make sure everybody's accurately remunerated. How does that sound like?
Well, yeah, right, but I think somebody, I'd make a motion to do that and add it up.
I don't think it's just a
Well, I think we need to find out the right number.
How many positions are there and how much of an increase should there be?
I would suggest that, anytime between
Before the deliberative?
Well, I'll take a look. Anywhere around there, you think you're going to go and step up, come up with a number, it's a significant number, you can decide at decision day, by in $1,500 or something. But to try to do it today, go through all those numbers doesn't make sense, because we don't know all those numbers, so.
And you want to be consistent. as well.
And the only thing I would suggest that the budget committee has to decide if in fact it's $5.97 versus $5.91, that you have to change that amount, which is on paper basically, but if not, it's going to go to $5.99, so it's going to be better.
Paul, how long do you think it would take you to identify those positions?
So the only positions that were three, and the total amount of money it would cost is $71 to go up 4% for those three positions.
The budget committee salary is $750, so 4% of that. And then HDC salary is $561, so 4% of that. And there was one more.
So there's only a few people who
Heritage. Yep, Heritage
Okay, so it sounds like.
is $480. It's $480 is the salary, so.
So it's 22, 30, 19, so like the total is $71 for 4% forward increase for those positions.
Okay, that's interesting.
So increasing COLA for those?
Yes.
And then, Chuck, regarding the 597, Susan just forgot to change it on the warrant. It is 597. Is it?
It's just a type of
I just want to make sure.
it should be 5 minutes, then it's incorrect. Yes. Correct. So
It will be voted on 597. That's a second on the COLA.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Kevin?
And that was on the COLA, was our motion. So now we're gonna vote on,
But now you have to change it. Do you want to change it?
no, this is
No, 'cause it was-
it's a type of revenue that
It wasn't.
So I think it's really important
Yes.
that it's a type of revenue that should have an estimated tax and that is $5.97, not $5.99.
But they want to have to change the operating budget. And that's something we want to do.
Yes, and
Yes,
that's
it is.
$390.
Yeah, it would go up to $390.
And do we motion second and vote?
Yes, yes.
So I need a motion.
Motion to accept the increase.
Second.
Yeah, the motion is to transfer the amount to be raised to $7,981,390.
Yes.
And all in favor of the warrant article 13? Aye.
All in favor?
Second.
Yeah, it's recorded, who's moving it, it's like.
Next up is Article 14. To see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to allow a 1.5% reduction from property tax when payment is made prior to the due date. It is the responsibility of the taxpayer to make the deduction. Deductions not taken by the taxpayer on or before the due date will not be refunded. Majority vote required. Discussion?
Yeah, that motion would be called.
Motion?
I'll separate the release.
Okay.
Before you do the motion.
Any public comment? Do you have a motion? Second? All in favor? Okay.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, Article 15, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Buildings Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund previously established. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is 12 cents per thousand. Public discussion?
So this has been a warrant article for many years. We did not go up this year despite the increases in materials across the board, but just to put this in perspective, the replacement cost of every town building put together would be $29.8 million. So this represents a 0.33% investment on a yearly basis to maintain our buildings and make sure that we don't have to incur any replacement costs. Some of the upcoming projects beyond the master plan, we've been approved, or we got a loose plate grant for the Grace Daily Barn. That will be one of the things that's coming out of this reserve fund. We have some upgrades going on for the town hall. The cupola of the town hall is in need of some repair, so that may be something that's coming out. It's not necessarily saying these are happening this year, but this funds future projects, paving the town hall parking lot, the front steps. Upgrades to the police department, so we don't have to build an entirely new building, so they, we can rearrange that so that it accommodates our fully staffed police department. Just the things like that, and just the general maintenance that everybody would do on their house. Things as you grow in and out of the house, you make changes to it. So this has always been supported by the voters in the past, and I hope that is carried over.
So what's in there now?
350,600.
Okay. And you talked about earlier at one point some energy updates on some of the buildings. Would that come out of there too?
Yes. So as far as the museum and what we're looking at for South Station is the furnaces that we pulled out of the old fire department, we'll be utilizing there. That will leave the town hall as our remaining oil burning building. So it would be my intention to upgrade that to a propane system, as well as incorporating mini splits into the individual offices so that we're not having these vast differentials from one area of the room to another. So we're not opening windows in the middle of January.
Any other questions? All right. Any other public discussion?
I'll make a motion to accept Article 15.
Second.
And all in favor?
Second.
All in favor?
I'm just going to stay seated here since I have the next one.
Okay, Article 16, to see if the town of Kingston will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Highway Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund previously established. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is 12 cents per thousand.
So, to answer your question in advance here, I believe there's 122,000 in this reserve fund right now.
28,850.
Okay, approximately 45,000 of that will be spent if and when my new pickup ever arrives. If anyone wants to see why we need that, I can certainly take you for a ride in the green machine if the starter doesn't pop out on us, and it will actually start. We were lucky enough to get an inspection sticker on it, but that will not happen again. I don't think anyone's willing to take that chance. So that will bring us under $100,000 on that fund. The most recent plow truck that we purchased was at $189,000, fully outfitted. I believe it was Atkinson purchased one just recently. They're still waiting on it. That was over $214,000. So that's, if one of our trucks went today, we would not be in a position to replace it. And so.
Are some of the delays in vehicles still, the computer chips, is that still an issue for?
Depends on what line they want to tell me this week. They tend to contact me every 2 weeks to tell me it'll be 3 more weeks. My truck was built on the 11th of September and theoretically is in transit right now. But it's everything from microchips to just all kinds of parts that they're slowly getting put together. We're in a really good situation as far as equipment equipment being reliable and not, you know, because our mechanic is also someone I rely on to plow. And when you start plowing, things start breaking. And we're in a very good position as far as our maintenance program where we're able to stay ahead of any issues that come up, but that's because we have modern, reliable equipment, and that's because of this fund. So it's been supported in the past. It did go up, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago, and I didn't feel that, given the current situation and the pinch everybody's getting everywhere else, that it was appropriate to raise it, but that may be coming in the future, but for right now, that should get us in a position where we can replace one of our key mainline trucks if the need was there. If not, we'll continue to build that up and, you know, hopefully be ready when that does happen.
Could you accept a $50,000 increase instead of $100,000?
The problem with that is, so the pickup's gonna be $45,000. That'll put us at what did you say, 28, 128? So that'll be $83,000, so we won't even have enough. If something breaks within the next year, we won't have enough to purchase a new truck. Our oldest truck is 26 years old. And eventually, something's gonna happen. So, I mean, if that's the board's pleasure, so be it. But I think keeping it at 100,000 really isn't enough as it is. So.
Like what we said, the cost of equipment is going up. When you buy new cars and trucks, it is going up. I just worry about the budget right now, and I appreciate that our highway director kept it at the same. And, you know, there's a member of the audience who was here way back when we established these capital reserves. I will speak to each one because I am in favor because I keep the budget level funded instead of the spikes whenever we buy a piece of equipment. So we'll cross that bridge later when it comes, when he has to buy every piece of equipment, but I support all these capital reserve fund.
Any other discussion?
Just, I mean, to Claudia said, I mean, I am concerned that the budget might not pass, and I don't know whether we should be trying to do anything, and I don't know what that might be, but anything to say to the taxpayer, well, we've cut back here, because we really need to have the budget pass. And I don't know whether we should just go the way it's going and just hope that it passes. Maybe it will, hopefully it will, but I don't know if that would be something we could say to the taxpayer, but we decided to go knock up, I don't know, 25,000, we did this or something on each one of these, whatever, in an effort to say we're trying to do the best we can, but I think you gotta have it.
I think you can say you've already done that, because you've already gone back to the 3 highest budgets and say cut money, which they did, which is not money they wanted to get rid of any means. But they did get rid of it, and they did take some major steps to get this down.
Rick, I kind of struggled with some of the same stuff when I was looking at this, because I'm like, you know, does us unanimously, if all of a sudden this goes through, do we unanimously support every single one of these? Does that send the message that, hey, we're just looking to blow things out? And it's, I guess my interpretation now is, I recognize the importance of these running forward, and I agree that they're important and correct, but I think we can still tell the voters, listen, we support what this represents and how we've been doing it to, you know, balance these things out, prepare for stuff, but ultimately it is their choice. I mean, I know historically, I don't know of any of these that have ever gotten voted down since I've been in town for the capital reserve.
One year.
Okay.
1 year all, it was actually 1 year.
Was that 2008? During that?
The odd part about it was they voted money in open space. Police, fire, and highway were all turned down. It was crazy. That life safety we're talking about, people voted to protect land instead. Go figure.
Yeah.
But, so hopefully they, know, that's the only time that I've ever seen that actually happen.
And I guess, I'm going to support these cap because I think they are important to do it. But I think when people talk to me personally and ask about, my message to them is our proposed budget is the most important piece. So when they go to the voting booth, they feel there's a place where they have to cut back, I'd ask for them to look for it elsewhere other than the budget. But I think by us just recommending isn't saying, hey, we agree with spending all this money, but we agree with the proposals of why they're being brought forward and that it's important to the services that we provide for the community and not encumbering those big spikes in costs for major projects or equipment.
And I think that you hit on a great point, and two parts to it. We said that the oldest truck is 26 years old, and I certainly don't want to jinx you here, but I don't know of many vehicles that are on the road without antique plates on that are more than 26 years old, so to be putting up with the plowing and that force that puts on a truck to keep it on, that's a huge shout out to your maintenance department for keeping that truck running. But like you said, it's a matter of time before we need to replace that.
And I guess I would put it this way, is, this number isn't arrived at arbitrarily. It's taking into account each year what it will take to replace a vehicle, on the current schedule of a lifespan of a vehicle, how will be done. I think dropping it to 50 is more of a feel-good measure than an actual, it's going to hurt more than it's going to help. And I think in something like this, you can maybe get away with a year. If it didn't pass, you can survive, but cutting it in half almost is, you're losing a year that you would have had if it didn't pass, because the $100,000 is based on market conditions, what a truck is going to cost to replace, or what an engine will cost to replace. Last year we had one below in the beginning of the year. It was $28,000, I believe, to replace an engine, and that came out of this fund. So it's not just to buy new vehicles, it's also, to keep the equipment going in those emergency situations. So it's not just to buy new fancy trucks, it's also just to keep a frontline truck up and running.
So I'm curious, there's probably an easy answer for this. We have an equipment repair line item within the highway department budget. How is this different than what that's allocated to?
So the equipment line item in the budget just basically handles tires, batteries, your day-to-day maintenance, your ongoing maintenance. This is to either purchase new equipment or an unexpected, kind of catastrophic failure of a vehicle, like a transmission blows, an engine blows, something like that. Yeah, it's just, the $28,000 that for that engine last year, that was not money that was in the budget. There was nowhere near enough to cover that, so that came out of this reserve fund. That is meant, because this also requires the selectmen to hold hearing and authorize the use of the fund. That is just our day-to-day, we go through a lot of pieces and parts on a daily basis, and just for the budget committee's knowledge, we do actually break it down by truck. So we track actually what each piece of equipment is requiring each year for maintenance. And there comes a point when the 26-year-old truck is just costing a lot more than it's worth any longer. A friend of mine said it best, you're always going to have a payment. It's just whether it's scheduled every month or whether you get a kick in the teeth every 8 months when something breaks on your vehicle and you're without it for a week and a half. So, that budget is what we use to we use that to monitor kind of the health of our fleet, just in what it's costing us to keep it going.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
I also think that the townspeople rely on the budget committee to put their approach on what's needed spending. And they pretty much, the people pretty much support our budgets for the last 10, 15 years because they have faith in the budget committee and the process that we go through to make sure that's the right thing. And I think we have a responsibility to tell the folks what we need, and it's up to them to fund it or not. In some years it will be good, in some years it's not so good. These capital reserve funds, the savings accounts, I wish the federal government would do that a little bit. We see the print money in that than anything else, but if we set money aside, there will be need comes, then you're not going to have the funds to do it, and that's going to have a bad effect on the tax rate. So all of this will also $120 a thousand.
Yes.
And apologize, this isn't technically about this article, because people mentioned the default. I question whether or not, I don't need an answer. Whether the chief of police or the board of selectmen has thought about what happens if we do go default, and what happens with the school resource officer. Because you're gonna lose $500,000 and you wouldn't want, I just didn't know what to talk about. You had a break, you had to bring it up. If you go default, you're paying for the school resource officer now, out of the budget. Yes? That maybe $500,000 less. Will you commit to paying the school resource officer out of that money?
School resource officer is paid 100% by the school.
No, it isn't. It's paid out of your budget.
And then it's reimbursed by the school.
So you still have to pay for it out of the budget that's now $500,000 less. My question is just when the school already has the default, in which case it's not an issue, but I just wanted somebody to think about it. That's all.
Okay. Any other discussion on Article 16? Motion.
I move to accept Article 16.
Second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Second.
Thank you very much for your support.
All right, next up is Article. Next up is Article 17, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the fire apparatus replacement capital reserve fund, previously established, majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is 12 cents per thousand.
Good morning. Exactly what Phil just said. Actually, the year that the voters voted in the new fire station, they voted down this capital reserve fund. So it is, like Kevin and Chris said, that it just level funds the savings account. That my oldest truck is 30 years old, so I have Phil beat, but it's exactly what it's intended to do. If it fails, then I believe right now we have $550,000 in our account, roughly. Looking at the trending, it actually gains a decent amount of interest as well. So replacement fire truck, depending on what you're replacing, an engine tanker, is roughly around $600,000 now. So
How much are you?
600 is
Yeah, it was a little low.
a base price.
So right now in the fund, there isn't enough to cover a new truck.
Correct.
Any other?
What's the replacement cycle?
So usually for trucks, it has been a new truck or replacement truck every 20 years, and the ambulances are every 12 years. Because obviously we run the ambulances a lot more. The 30-year-old truck that we have, we probably won't replace. So the tanker is the next one due, and that was technically due in 21, so that one's 22 years old. So, but understanding that, budgets are tight and replacement costs are a lot higher, we have kind of put Band-Aids on things, still keeping the vehicle safe and able to be on the road, but understand that 20 years isn't always necessary. So if we can push them out a few more years and still get the job out of the truck, then that's what we do.
What's the cost of an ambulance?
An ambulance is probably about $250,000.
And when's the next one due to replace?
2025, I believe. The ambulance is a different fund though. We have an ambulance replacement fund that has $340,000.
And also the revenue left from the ambulance fund goes into that, is that correct?
Yes, but when we bill patients for transport and our services, any resident billing goes into the general fund. Any non-resident billing goes into the ambulance fund.
Any Any other discussion? Movement?
Or I would accept Article 17.
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Article 18, to see if the town will vote to create 2 full-time firefighter/EMT positions. Further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $115,231,000 for salary and benefits for 9 months. If approved, these positions will become part of the operating budget in ensuing years. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is 13 cents per thousand.
So I do ask for your support on this one. I fully, as a taxpayer in Kingston, I fully understand that this is not a good year to do this. I said that to myself last year. I was gonna put this article forward last year, but thought that was the bad year. Boy, was I wrong. So my job as the fire chief in Kingston and emergency management is to ensure that any emergency can be mitigated in Kingston, whether it's medical call, structure fire, motor vehicle accident, hazmat. When I brought forward the per diem program to the selectmen, that was basically because we had I won't say mass exodus, but a lot of call members moved out of town, retired, and what have you, which we used to cover daytime with full-time employees and nighttime was always call members. That was kind of going away. So we were unable at that time to get an ambulance to every emergency. Let me be clear, an ambulance will always go to emergency, it just may not always be a Kingston ambulance. So we rely on mutual aid, but that's also not fair if we're relying on mutual aid to cover our calls. We brought forth per diem, that's been here for 4 years now, that has worked. I advised the selectmen at the time that it was a temporary solution. It was the cheapest solution at the time because we don't have to pay them benefits, and we try not to pay them overtime. Unfortunately, the employee pool for not just fire, but all first responders is dwindling fast. A lot of people are hiring, full-time fire employees, so a lot of our per diems are getting hired full-time. We have a few that are full-time at other departments that work for us as well, but it's not getting easier to fill those spots. My overtime line last year was over by $40,000, and that was largely due to if a per diem doesn't sign up, then I still need to have 2 employees working, 2 EMTs to be able to transport. So that $40,000 was over. There is a SAFER grant that is meant for staffing of fire departments. I've talked to somebody at FEMA about the SAFER grant. I've talked to other fire chiefs in the area that have received the SAFER grant. Unfortunately, the SAFER grant is just for fire. It has nothing to do with EMS. So they have, NFPA is like the fire protection rules. NFPA says that you need an officer and 3 firefighters on a fire truck. To go for this grant with only 2 employees, asking for 2 employees, they will not give it to us because that doesn't meet the minimum NFPA standards. Goffstown, New Hampshire, went for 4 guys through the SAFER grant last year, or 2 years ago. They got turned down. They went for 8 guys the following year and it got approved. The SAFER grant will pay for that employee all year, all physicals, and their salary for 3 years. The town has to take it over after that. So for me to put in for this grant, even though we get 4 guys, and even at 4 guys, it wouldn't still meet the minimum NFPA standards. If I put in for 4 guys and got the grant, they would pay for 3 years of those 4 people, but then added to our budget in the fourth year would be $500,000. So at this time, I have not put in for that grant because, like I said, all the advice I got was that you're going to get denied anyway because you're only going for 2 people. So in 2022, we averaged 1 to 2 shifts per week that either had to be covered for by overtime or were not covered at all, and we only had 1 person on. So I do what I can and kind of stay alert and respond to calls when needed, even outside my normal, that's part of my job. So I do ask for your support and, you know, to allow the voters, hopefully, to support it as well.
So it looks like you dropped, because you were talking about 3 to 2. Do you have a strategy around that, or?
For what?
I think originally you had proposed 3 full-time firefighters when we talked earlier in the fall about that. It looks like now you're just asking for 2.
Well, to become full-time, you know, around the clock with full-time people, I need 4, because I have 4 full-timers now. I need 4, so I'm asking for 2 this year and probably 2, you know, next year, the year after.
And so with the salary, right, so we appreciate the staffing issues that you've had, and you explained that to us. I'm wondering about the salary here, and then the per diem, if there would be an offset, right? So you already have the per diem amount, presumably if you had 2 full-time staff, you wouldn't use as much per diem and as much overtime.
Correct. Well, overtime may not go down a lot, or at all, because with 2 full-timers, you have vacation time and sick time that you need to account for coverage. The per diems, my plan was to cut that line, but still, during the day from 7 to 3, it's usually the 2 firefighters plus Kelly, my admin, who's an AMT, and myself, who's an EMT. So during the day, we have the ability to get 2 ambulances or an ambulance and a fire truck for a motor vehicle accident out the door. If we had 2 people on shift and eventually could keep like a per diem overnight, that would give us 3 people, which would give us the ability to get an ambulance and a fire truck or 1.5 ambulances out, but at least get the ambulance to your emergency. So yes, I guess the long answer to your question is money would be coming out of that, but I don't want to get rid of that line altogether.
Right, I guess that was just in terms of palatability, right? That going to be, you know, I don't know how we would indicate that or not, but if there's, right, if we're adding to staff, like, if that's useful for the taxpayers to know that, like, oh, well, we're going to actually, we could reduce in here, if you open this line item over here, could be offset a little bit. And I know you have income, et cetera, but just trying to think about it in terms of like if that's a strategy.
Yeah, I guess kind of along those lines, would there be a corresponding reduction to the full-time salary line, which is going up 40% year over year in the fire department budget?
The full-time salary line?
Yeah, we've got a full-time salary line going up by 37% and then overtime salary going up by 30%. Are you saying that there'd be a reduction to those 2 lines based on this getting approved?
The larger reduction would be out of the per diem line. Because then I wouldn't need, if I had 2 full-time employees, those 2 shifts would no longer be covered by per diems. Per diem line, that's 175,000, 180,000. That would probably get reduced, just rough numbers, don't hold me to it, but probably 50,000, 60,000.
That's assuming you get hired someone right away, assuming the public doesn't get hired someone right away. It's still going to have that time. You should tell the public that you've been very creative about looking for alternatives to our staffing issues, and you did reach out to the area fire departments to see if we could cooperate more with our neighbors. It didn't work out well, but I think Chief a lot of credit for reaching out. It was a very interesting experience for us whole fire people, I'll tell you that much.
I guess I'm not really clear then, the 37% increase in the 2023 budget for full-time staffing, what is, that's not a higher staffing level, or what is that based on?
That's based on advice or information from the selectmen to put any pay raises in to get them up to where they need to be.
So one of the things with the ambulance, a lot of people don't think about it until they need it. And I don't know if you have the monthly or yearly numbers, but how many ambulance calls do you do on an average week or an average month?
So last, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, I will on my year-end letter.
Just an estimate.
So ambulance call, total calls last year, I think we were at 1,300 or 1,400.
Okay, so that's quite a few that,
Sure.
And a lot of them happen at odd hours.
Yep, busy at times is daytime, but
Okay.
people are home at night and we get calls 24 hours a day.
Yeah. And another point is that with the ambulance calls, those do get reimbursed, so the fire
Yes, we
department
have a
brings in
billing
a lot
company,
of
so
revenue.
we average anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000 a year in revenue.
And if we're using the mutual aid, then that money would get sent to the other town, right? Because they were doing the actual call. So not only is it costing us money if we're doing overtime and that stuff, but we're also losing revenue on that side too.
And it's not just Kingston that has staffing issues, it's any town in USA. So,
Yeah.
if we're relying on East Kingston to cover our calls because we can't staff them, then, that's not fair to residents of East Kingston.
Chief, as a practical matter, it almost seems like eventually there's gonna have to be some kind of, not regionalization.
Don't say that.
I mean, just gotta bring the fire, but at some point, with all these staffing issues, all the towns around, all the police departments, all these, I mean, it seems like we're kind of on a bad course that eventually something's gonna give here. I'm not saying, I'm just saying it's kind of an esoteric question as far as what's gonna happen in the future, because it just seems like it doesn't look great in terms of.
But I am still talking to one town about some sort of, we don't call it the R word, we call it shared staffing, shared resources. The R word's a bad word, but, so I'm still talking to one town about that and about how to, plan for it and work with it. I think it's going to get there eventually. I think we're gonna be forced into doing it.
I'd like to say that Chief Pellerin, as long as he's been chief, has been straightforward with the board and done alternatives. He started with the per diem, and I would like to say, Joe mentioned Kingston being one of the safest towns for the police. I'd like to say the fire and ambulance, we're one that can get the ambulance out in appropriate care immediately. You should see what happens in some of the other towns that I want to talk about. But that was because there's per diem to get the 24-hour coverage. And as I said, that pool has been exhausted. I started this year doing 2 calls a month. 2 per diem shifts a month. And that was going to cost to me that I'm not taking overtime time in my own. And then I got injured, and I was on duty for 2 months. I couldn't do it. All I get every day is an email and a text looking for coverage. He is exhausting everything trying to get that pool. Has shrunk so much, right? And then he thought outside the box. Okay, our coverage is so good in Kingston that other towns were shouldering their burden on us, and we were responding to other towns. And he had to put the kibosh on it, and then he looked outside the box about regionalizing. And I will tell you, that went like a lead balloon. And I can't believe it. You know what? All I know is he's doing a great job in our town, all right? And I'm proud of that. So now he's coming forward with this. This is needed, okay, as Chuckle mentioned, and he alluded to the SAFER grant. That is still an option, but we gotta get it. We're not ready to bring on 4 people around the clock at the station, all right? But that's still an option down the road. I'm concerned about the overtime line being over like $40,000, okay? What we're not talking about is what that's doing to the retirement system that the town is paying at 35%. We're not talking about that. So it's one thing to pay a salary, it's another thing to pay that overtime line. And you know what? Joe is proud that he has a great staff, and I'm happy about that. But we're not talking about the fire department. He has been retaining people, so those people are getting more vacation and everything else. So that's why there's more overtime is covering now his vacations and sick days and everything else, because he has a small staff. He has 2 people on duty, he has to maintain 2 people. So this, though it looks in the short term as an added cost and a taxpayer cost, in the long term, it's gonna pay off because it's gonna lower those numbers down. And I'm still concerned about getting that ambulance out the door because he had a great solution with the per diem, but that ship has sailed because everyone's getting hired. There are no per diem people.
Right. I do just want to add that Chief Johnson, he gave credit to the fire department too in that keeping the town safe. And that it was a big part of that. All 3 departments were part of that safety because if the roads aren't plowed, we have more accidents and so forth. So definitely was a combined effort on that part.
But I support this because the chief has done depreciating, and this is just what we're coming to.
Yeah, yeah. And then another point too is aging population that we have in town, and that we have an increased number of retirement communities and the assisted living place, and that's increased the number of calls too, right?
Yes, in 18 months for All-American, we've been there 260 times.
And that was told to the planning board, it'd be 50 calls a year.
Yeah.
The only other thing with overtime is, excuse me, it's good that my guys, they're making extra money, and but they're also getting burnt out. So I don't want to lose the 4 employees, the full-timers that I have. And Kelly takes some open shifts as well for 24 hours. So I don't want them to get burnt out by, feeling that they need to take the open shifts.
And probably other towns are putting on full times, and we don't have them, we're gonna be out. So.
I will say I did struggle with this article until I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with the chief, and I support it as a warrant article. I probably would not have supported this if we tried to put it into the budget, because I know we were all really focused on making sure we got the current town employees paid appropriately to retain all those employees that we already have and make sure we're competitive and fair to our surrounding communities. But as a warrant article where the community gets to vote if this is the next step they want to take on, engaging services for their public safety and the response times and that type of coverage, I do support it. But I think it is just very important to make sure that everyone understands that, these initial numbers are just for that 9 months. So immediately next year, this jumps up over $150,000. So the taxpayers just need to be aware that they're willing to shoulder that burden. But, I know the chief didn't put it on last year thinking, okay, this is the bad year and I'm gonna stave it off, but it is his job to prepare for the future and what public safety needs we have. So I think it's appropriate, whether he gets the support or not, that he brings this type of stuff forward when it's warranted.
No, we have a fully staffed library, we have a fully staffed police department. I think we need a fully staffed fire department too.
So should I put in for 4 guys?
I appreciate that. That's what it comes down to, okay? They're not fully staffed.
Yeah, this is a need that is now, not in the future, but yes, things are going to get worse with per diems and lack of coverage in the future.
We have two major projects that can still go in town, and if they do, next year adding 2 people will be a lot easier, because there'll be more of a need and more of a tax base.
And those 2 projects, from what I hear, are still
Any other discussion? Motion?
I just have one thing. So if there's a possibility we're going to add 2 this year and 2 more next year, does it make sense to apply for the SAFER grant?
Well, like I said, even with the 4, that still doesn't bring me to a minimum standard for, I'd have to go for 8 or...
You think you would have to go for 8, that is the absolute minimum?
So
the rule of fire is always 2 in, 2 out. So 2 people in the building, you have 2 people to rescue those 2 people. So the minimum staffing for, and again, it's unfortunate that NFPA doesn't take into account that 90% of our calls are EMS now. But they're still, their regulation is for a fire.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Article 19, to see if the town will vote to create 1 full-time land use administrative assistant position and eliminate the current part-time position. Further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $23,064 for salary and benefits for 9 months, to be added to the $33,587 currently in the proposed executive budget. If approved, this position will become part of the operating budget in ensuing years. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is 3 cents per thousand.
Comment with that.
Okay.
Where it says 33,587 currently in the proposed executive budget, it is not in the executive budget. It's in the planning and the zoning board budget.
I think part of it is, I think the FICA is in the executive budget and the 31.2 is in the PD
budget.
Right, the 2306 or would go into the executive budget for disbursement if this passed.
Why don't you just change it to operating budget?
Operating budget, that's fine.
Executive.
Yeah, that's right. And then the comment on this position is we have, right now, no plans to fill it. This is a just-in-case thing based on the fact that we have one very large proposal that's probably going to hit the slate. We had two large proposals that we thought we would be working on at this point, that we're not. We thought seminary and the warehouse would be full blast by now, and they're not. If they had been, then Grand Speech would have been easy, because we would have had the tax revenue, we would have had the business, we would have had the buildings. So we're not in any plans right now to fill this position, but it has to be voted on to fill it if the need arises.
So I do have a comment too, is prior to becoming a selectman, I was on the planning board, and I'm now the selectman's representative to the planning board, so I have been doing it for 7 years, and I'm sure Ellen can attest to the fact that even without those major projects, the amount of projects in general that have been going on in this community, we need to be able to move to that position, going to more hours, to being able to sustain the town. I mean, it's not only a service to the citizens that need to come in and be able to sit down and figure out how to go through the process. Having somebody here with those more hours, we had to move to the town. We brought on a town planner through a contract, so we weren't just getting kind of part-time hours for that through Rockingham Planning Commission. I think not only when the big projects come in and the town does get revenue, I think it's an important service to the citizens and businesses to have people more that can come in and just ask those questions to help guide them through the process and get them to a point which can actually lessen the burden or lessen problems that we have, more information and access to folks that they have up front. So I definitely support this and us being able to increase those hours and bring that position forward to the needs of the town.
Increasing that's needed.
First, I'm actually disappointed that the Board of Selectmen is saying we're not doing it right away, based on, I understand what you're saying, that there are a couple big projects and stuff, but people don't realize the amount of phone calls that are waiting for the administrative assistant, because they call downstairs doesn't have the information. Tons of our staff are all new. And so then the secretary comes in, administrative assistant, and there's all these questions that residents have been waiting to get an answer from the town from, and they have to wait till that person comes in. And they sometimes have to wait a couple of days. And that's not really being beneficial to the residents who are trying to do the right thing and go through the process, and there's nobody who can answer their questions for a couple of days. It's not just working on the applications that come in, which also take an extraordinary amount of time, but we're supposed to be trying to, like everybody else, serve the public. And by having somebody there part-time, you have a new building inspector, you have new people downstairs, there's nobody there to even answer the question to the public. They just get referred to the planning board, and then they have to wait till somebody comes in. So it's not just the projects, but it's helping the public that this is a big enough town that you should have a full-time administrative assistant for planning and zoning.
And I would say, I don't think it's the select board isn't ready to authorize it. I think it's the person in the position. They took it as a part-time position, and they were waiting for a time which was appropriate for them to be able to take on the additional hours and responsibilities.
I wasn't blaming myself.
Can I ask a question about some of these numbers? So when I look at what we have for salary for, proposed salary for planning and zoning and ZBA, I get a higher number than what is currently in the warrant article. So with the current salary for this position, is looking like it's $34,543 in the current proposed budget based on the salary increases in the poll. Is that something we should update? So,
I guess I don't understand.
so when I take the salary from the proposed budget salary for the planning board and the ZBA salary, that equals 33,800 as the new proposed budget plus a quota of 743. So those, I'm just trying to make sure that the number in the warrant article is matching our current budget.
Yeah, it's not, I don't know if this is, if the 23 makes it a full time, you know what I'm saying? Because it was, the intention was that we wanted to be able to fill the roles for a full-time position. We anticipate that it will certainly grow to even more than it is right now. And that's going to take a little time, not a lot of time.
So, yeah, I guess maybe, do we want to phrase it a little differently, that to approve a full-time position of X amount if needed, it's currently.
Right, so it created one full-time landing position.
From the part-time, and the numbers.
So, yeah, we're just saying the numbers aren't matching.
Yeah, numbers, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But it's within a few $100, right?
It's, over, like $1,000.
But I think, I think we should get that accurate number if that's, because if it's gonna continue into the following budget, the default budget, you don't wanna end up with
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
Supported.
Did you, when you're adding the number coming out, did you reduce it by 3 months?
Right, because it's being added to the current, this 23,000 is the 9 months, and then the 33,587 is what I'm thinking is supposed to be in the full year for the budget.
With benefits, right?
And that's what I'm asking, because when I add it up, it's just salary and I'm not adding any benefits. I want to make sure we.
We'll check that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
So for 23,000, what I did was I took all the benefits. I took what she makes hourly right now, multiplied it by 40 hours and 52 weeks.
Yep.
Got a salary, and then added in all the other benefits, retirement,
Okay.
FICA, insurance, all that stuff, just like I did for the fire department,
Yep.
and then took 9 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So that 23 includes so that 23, that whole amount wouldn't go on the payroll line. It would be, that's for everything altogether.
Okay. But it's the 33,587.
That is just her salary and FICA.
Paul, can I ask you for group 1, do you put FICA, or is it just retirement? Is it FICA?
Social Security, Medicare. Yes. Only fire and police don't have social.
Group 2, so it is different, group 2 to group 1, okay, that's what I was wondering.
26, 27. Okay.
Can we vote on if the numbers aren't right?
It's a common.
We can always amend the number.
We can always amend it, okay.
Yeah. We'll just need to.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll possibly amend those numbers, but any other discussion? No? Okay. Do we have a motion?
It's still more, if we go to a level,
Right, yeah, I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and all in favor?
what's the matter, Richard?
Worried about the biggest budget benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I think that always we're agreeing to everything, we have no disagreements, right, on it, which is great. I mean, I'm happy on it. I think it's very important, and just, I am concerned about just the optics around all of us, around this, so that's, I don't know.
For once, we're anticipating needing a full-time position. It's all in the line. Yeah, maybe we can recognize of that person's 40 hours an hour, but it's not that good. And so we're saying to our taxpayers, that this is what we're don't want to have the staff needed to process correct building codes.
If you were down in the office for a few days, you'd never think about turning this down. If you saw the number of
And I want to be clear, I think the issue is just the overall budget, the overall warrant, because I 100% get what you all are saying, what Ella is saying, the planning board, I 100% get it. That's I'm just off.
So I would say we need to go to the school district, because if you want to save money, 80% of the revenue tax dollar goes to the schools. And I'd be happy to pontificate on that issue.
based on other towns in the area, our percentage of increase is small.
It's still going to be a struggle.
Major job of cutting these fees, you cut the budget several times. You don't have to cut it again just to show good faith or whatever you're trying to show.
The voters will ultimately decide, it's in their hands, and everyone's struggling with today's costs. You look at the fuel bills, they're outrageous. No, electricity is nothing compared to the fuel bill, as far as I'm concerned. Big dollars. And every one of us is facing the question.
Our job is, and your job is to show the need and to do it at a decent price. You know, as affordable price if we can. And we've done that. It's the voters' choice that's left. So when you go to the default budget, we know there's gonna be some major cuts in town. Services and everything else. They'll have to be.
I think we've been operating on part-time for all these years, I think one more year. As long as, like you said, there's nothing on the horizon that we should be able to operate another year part-time.
That's your right. And like I said, if you were downstairs, you wouldn't even think about going that way with the number of calls that come in constantly.
Okay, did we get a vote on that?
Who's those calls go to now?
They go, most of them, they go to either Robin Quinn or somebody else, but a lot of times they end up in voicemail for several days.
And she said they go to who, they go to, who the people want? Did they?
Every university has several, and Raleigh was the average right now.
And people don't just come to these boards for projects. They call and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this house, what can I do? Can I rezone it? Can I change this? So it's not just projects, but it's every day that people are calling in. I mean, there's some mobile homes would sell on the Wilson Road this week, and we've had 30 calls on it. Because everybody wants to know, can I get rid of it? Can I do this? What can I do? We have a housing project that may be coming in that will take a tremendous amount of work, very large housing project.
Let me also tell you that if you have a commercial development who's looking to go someplace in the area, to everybody complains we don't have enough to out to the tax base, they go into the town of Meals is the phone. You're not going to the town where you have to wait 3 days before you get somebody to call back.
That is correct.
It would be really good if you had one, place where it's supposed to have multiple people. But it would be really good if you had somebody who can answer the phone to say, even if to just say, Peter's not in today, give me your phone number, I'll send an email, we'll have to get in touch with you as soon as possible. Or a week followed on Monday, and somebody call me back Wednesday morning.
Is there any opportunity to have fees paid, kind of a self-funding thing where
Fees for what?
well, like, you say this is development, may come in this, housing thing, whatever, I mean,
Well, they do pay impact fees, but it won't go to this.
They do have impact fees, and then fees, they're fees can come out of the bond and goes for their approval. All the engineering and stuff we check and all that we do have income from a lot of this.
And I can say I have personally heard from some commercial developers over the years that one of the reasons they have avoided Kingston and some projects haven't even been proposed or come to Kingston is because Kingston Planning Board is notoriously slow.
And one other way to look at this is if this person isn't working, it puts more strain on the planning board itself because stuff is not in order for the businesses or there hasn't been time to get the right stuff ready or something else, which puts a burden on the planning board, which people say, well, I don't want to be on the planning board and come
So did we didn't get a vote yet, right? But we have the motion in the second? Correct. Okay, so, all in favor? Aye. Any nays? No.
Motion.
Second.
All fair.
Two opposed.
And two opposed, yeah. Two opposed. And Nick stepped out. Nick stepped out with one. Okay. Article 20, shall the town re-adopt the optional veterans tax credit in accordance with RSA 7228-2 for an annual tax credit on residential property of $500? Majority vote required, and there's no recommendations or votes.
Can I ask, do we know why there's these two ones? Yeah, I know why, I don't know why. We should only have one, right?
DAR said we had to do this in two different articles. And to me, it looks like they say the exact same thing.
DRA said we have to do this?
One is because it's an optional thing, and I think Kingston pays a different rate than what is in the state RSA.
Yeah, I believe the state allows up to $750, and we're only doing $500, is that it?
Yes.
But still, I don't know why we put it.
I understand why, but they said they wanted to do two articles.
So in order for it to pass, would the voters have to pass both of them?
You don't want them.
Either one passes
Seems like
over.
it does the same thing, but they said they wanted it two articles.
Okay, because that is confusing.
Do we need to vote on this?
No, there's no vote on this one.
Is this people doing it, is it confused, is this a DRA that you have to put it back in again?
Yes.
Interesting. And there's nothing on the legal says recommended by the board of selectmen on the one, not the other. Do you guys have to recommend, take a recommendation for on both of them, or I don't know?
I guess our policies are basically the same. What was the reason for that? I don't know. Susan,
Yep.
I thought we may have to, after so many years, we have to go about it. That's my understanding. I don't know, you never have to back it, but that's my
that's what they said the other day. They said every so many years we have to put it back on there and clarify that the people still want it. But we still don't understand why there's two articles.
Because they say the same
They
thing.
say basically the same thing other than optional veteran or all veteran.
The second one doesn't speak to $500.
You know, but it's contributed for the United States experience, it's 28.11 business.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it is ridiculous to put stuff on it.
Right, and if it's confusing to us, it's gonna be confusing to the
Is there any chance that we, if we have to put this on, is there any chance we can have something in writing from DRA that says this has to be on here, so we can tell the voters that we were told by DRA in writing that we need to have both of these? Because if the answer, when they ask the question of why is it on here, we say we don't know, we look like idiots. Yeah.
That's not a great idea. Bad idea.
I know this is kind of all that order, take that off. If you're gonna go with. I'll clarify that.
That's fine.
There's two different things based on the numbers.
I should probably say select, recommend by select.
So it's also one of these things where we have to vote on it today, but it can be amended at a deliberative session.
Yeah.
But it has to be voted on today so that we have it.
So we do have to vote on just the
It's just a work guide, it's not money, so we don't
And I move we accept Article 21.
Yeah, and I would just like it to be noted in the minutes that this is based off us getting something right on DRA. Proposals that come up
need clarification. We need clarification until we can. But then the project is going to.
So if we went to 750, it would just be one article.
Sounds out. But I think we need some.
Okay, moving on. Article 22, shall the town approve expenditure from the forest fund for $8,000 in order to update the forest management plan for Valley Lane Town Forest pursuant to RSA 31-111, designating proper management of town forests and to develop new trails and improve existing trails within all town forests. Funds to be expended from the existing forest fund. Town forests are managed by the Conservation Committee. Majority vote required, no tax impact. So again, this is just the Board of Selectmen voting, but any discussion? Okay, go ahead.
Sure, so really these two warrant articles go hand in hand together, the 22 and 23. So we're trying to, in 23, we're trying to combine Valley Lane Town Forest, all the abutting properties into one property. And then we want to expend, so we're required to go before the Board of Selectmen in the town to request any money that is spent out of the forest fund. So you approved the sale of the, for example, Acorn Town Forest, we've had a sale this year, but we can't spend that money until it's approved by the town to do that. So once we get the property together, then we want to be able to do a new forest management plan for that whole area, which costs a little over $5,000 was our estimate for that. And then the remaining funds would be used to do trail maintenance within the town forest. So the forest fund can only be expended, funds can only be expended in the town forest. They can't be for, let's say, along the trails or around the town as well. So the first one is to expend the money, the second one is to combine the two to the properties together. So again, designate Valley Lane as one big property and also move it from, because it's also called Town Forest, and to just officially designate it as Valley Lane Town Forest.
I would just add that we're required by the easement to have a forest management plan for each forest that we have. We have a forest management plan for Valley Lane, which is our premier forest, but it was written in 1995 before there were even trails there, before our timber harvest was done. Now there's been other parcels added, and our forester, the one who's written all of our forest management plan, says that Stan Knowles, who wrote it, passed away in 2014, and since the plan was written, there's been a timber sale and construction of a trail system, plus introduction of emerald ash borer and woolly Belgian. And then we're adding another 50 acres, and he said a new plan would be in order. It may not cost as much as $5,000 because we already have some maps, but he may need to draw new maps. In any case, part of this money, it's a no taxpayer expense. It comes out of money that we already have that's earmarked for us, and we just have to come before the town to ask permission to use it, according to that RSA. Any questions?
Where is this?
Valley Lane.
Where's the, where are these ones?
They're so Valley Lane is off, literally the forest is off of Valley Lane, off of Hunt Road, right? So Hunt Road and then Valley Lane, right? And then part of the purchase of the the development of the 125 property, the Costco property was the purchase of property that abuts the Valley Lane property. So it's just taking that property that the town now owns, combining it in so that it's one parcel and designated as one parcel.
You haven't been there? It's a beautiful forest. Yeah. So it's sort of a formality.
Take a motion. I'll recommend we recommend Article 20.
Second.
Discussion. Vote.
Motion on 23.
Can you just read 23?
Sure, Article 23. Article 23, shall the town approve joining the existing Valley Lane Town Forest with the abutting properties located on map 6, 7, 9, and 10, and to be defined as one parcel with the designation Valley Lane Town Forest. These combined properties will continue to be managed by the Conservation Commission pursuant to RSA 31-112. Majority vote required, no tax impact.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 23.
Second.
Discussion, vote.
All right, last one. Article 24, to see if the town of Kingston will vote to move forward with determining the feasibility of the concept proposed by the Envision Kingston charrette in 2017 and put into practice temporarily during the 2022 Kingston Days celebration, to convert the plains to a one-way traffic pattern that allows the incorporation of walking and biking lanes as well as defined parking areas. This is a non-binding referendum.
So I would just add that the Board of Selectmen this was brought up at a couple Board of Selectmen's meetings, and it seems like there is a lot of split opinion on this. So the board had discussed putting this on to see what the town's interest was before people establish all these committees and go forward to see what the town's pulse was on whether they even wanted to entertain. So we'd like to see if the town wants this feasibility study, or if right out the gate an overwhelming majority don't even want to consider that. We don't want to dedicate a bunch of time and resources to something the town doesn't support.
We got a lot of feedback that people like the one-way traffic during Kingston Days, but we want to extend that on a more permanent basis. And so the best way is, there's a lot of people split on it, and surprisingly so. So the best way to make a decision, I think, is to let the board decide. This is a perfect example where if they really think we should go one way, let's try it.
So this is asking for that traffic pattern to become permanent, not just.
Just a study, it's given just a study and then come back.
To study,
This is not.
to study the possibility of making it a permanent traffic pattern.
Because I heard pretty split, I heard a lot of people just voice opposition, like, it was great for Kingston Days, but we don't want it full time. But then I did hear there were people that were interested in exploring it full time.
And I understand this is not binding, but would it have any impact on including that in future Kingston Day celebration?
No, because I think we can still, if we still like the way it performs for that singular time period event, we can still go forward and make it one way for those specific events. It's just, we don't want to incorporate it, because I have concerns that it'd be very difficult if it was permanently one way. Every time there's a cross country, we then have to turn it into two-way on the other lane. That's now been changed. So, but it doesn't restrict us from being able to use it on, individual basis.
It seems like the last sentence, this is a non-binding referendum. It isn't, the wording in the first part doesn't say it's going to happen, it's just that it's a feasibility study. So, it just seems redundant that you're going to say it's not binding.
Well, I think we just didn't want to have a bunch of people from the community volunteer to incorporate a bunch of time. If the town overwhelmingly isn't interested, why dedicate a ton of time and resources that we bring to them for a vote, and they may vote down the meeting? Just forget about it.
Is there any cost associated with the feasibility study?
I think it's going to be all volunteer.
Well, I don't think it's really a study that we're doing. We're finding out if the voters are in favor of it or not. Because Phil's going to speak to it a little bit, but he's done a lot of research, and one that really made me was how little somebody has to drive out of the way if it is made one way, because there's so many cross streets.
It strikes me that, in all due respect to the citizenry, having a citizen study committee, it's like, for people that are for or against it, and want to get it, it seems like it'd be better to say there's something like the Rockingham Planning Commission, but this is what we pay you guys for. What's your recommendation? What are the pros and cons?
Well, let's see, I'm sure they'll come up with an 18-foot wide bike lane. I can already give you the RBC's answer. I'd like to preface this with I am agnostic on either way we go with this, but
if we are going to do anything with that, we should know, because paving for those roads is coming up. Not in the next 2 years, but probably 3 or 4 year time frame. Additionally, there are a lot of people who walk around the plains, and it does create a traffic issue because there's a ditch running along Main Street. So it kind of gives me some guidance as far as what we're going to do for the long term with traffic and paving and everything around the plains. As was stated after Kingston Day, and this was Joel's idea, for Kingston Days, we would just go with the one-way traffic pattern as we had in the days of the carnival. It was very well received and it worked out great. So regardless of this vote, we will most likely utilize the one-way traffic pattern for Kingston Days or any major event downtown going forward. But if we are going to utilize this, you know, we should make a decision on it just so that for future considerations, things can be put into it. As far as funding, we do have block grant funding, the highway block grant, and things like that could go towards this. And some of these studies, you know, it shouldn't be huge money. But I think, you know, the big takeaway from this is just people can weigh in on whether they want this to take place or not.
I mean, forgive me for arguing the point. This is not rocket science. I mean, this is a fairly simple thing. Either people like the concept or they don't, because of the crossroads. And so to me, it's like, if you get a strong vote in favor, you do it. If you get a strong vote against it, you don't. I mean, I don't know what it is.
If you do support it, then there is going to be a substantial cost associated with how it's determined that they want. If, you know, saying that you want to go one way isn't just, okay, we put it out, put out the barrels, now it's permanent. If there's discussion of people are interested in biking lanes or, you know, walking paths or whatever it is. I would disagree with that. I think it could be done not in the way that Envision Kingston envisioned. But, you know, they had a curve with, you know, basically taking out one of the lanes, putting a curve in, having like a grassed area, and then a walking path and a biking path and all that. I would say painting the lanes would be a lot easier. It wouldn't have any hindrance to our snow plowing operations. Wouldn't really change the character of how it's set up, and it could be done fairly cheaply. I mean, we're talking about the cost of the paint after we pave, and then, you know, you've got the designated parking areas, the biking lanes, the walking lanes. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know that a study is really necessary. I think it's just people making the call whether it's, we want to go this way.
I think Rick Russell said it eloquently. There's no need for a study. Our DPW director has an idea, and it'd be even easier than Kingston Days because Kingston Days takes away some of those crossovers. This wouldn't take away those crossovers. It shouldn't cost the man, and I think it should be worded. Are you in favor or not in favor? Let the voters decide. I don't think we need to set up another committee.
Like I said, what happens when, it's very easy to take two-way streets and close one off. What happens if every time there's a cross-country meet, and we have one?
You can do exactly
Stuff like, this is study
So I think what everybody's forgetting is there is a cross street every 200 feet. That would be two-lane traffic. So if someone had to get from a one-way road to the other, it would inconvenience them by 4 seconds.
Can't go across the distance of the fire station.
Right. It should not have any impact. As far as the cross-country meets, you just shut down the cross streets and the one-way traffic part is open, and that would still allow us to have the interchanges on the end available where someone could just, that would be the only time someone would have to do the full loop around the plains is when there's an event going on in the middle.
Ellen has a comment.
I think the selectmen are very wise to put this out of the way, or speaking to apply for the grant, because we've looked into applying for the grant just to move forward with the idea of whether the concept that was determined that Mission Kingston is feasible. This is big. Just to apply for the grant to get an engineer to come out and see if it's feasible. So in order to find out if it's feasible, would costs money, and I think that's the selectmen's point. Why go forward with the time, the money, and the effort if the town's not interested in it? Because at that point, there is a process. Contracts are going to be proposed, and the time going to ask them to select will have that available in the election. But this is just to see, it's going to be expensive or time consuming, just to even see if it's viable.
I agree that townspeople should weigh in on absolutely, but if we get to pay an engineer to tell us it's okay to go in one direction,
How about we just say, take a look at the feasibility study, and just leave it, up and down.
So the feasibility.
Feasibility, that's it.
Sounds like it doesn't really make
This is not exciting, it's that we decide not to do it, we don't have to do it.
this is the sleeper of the day.
I would like Chief's views on behalf of this. How does this impact the fire department or the EMT services? That's to me the most important thing. Where there are complaints, where haste is properly.
You're very fast with the classroom.
I thought I was done. Thank you for bringing me the big boy table. Kingston Daily had been paying because the crossroads weren't available because, for safety wise, people walking through the plains, for responses, as long as, the main one is probably the, Steer, I believe, right across from Rockland Road. So as long as the cross streets are still there, it's not, shouldn't really be an issue. Like, somebody had said, if the cross streets are open, your inconvenience is like, 40 feet, 100 feet.
Thank you.
Another
Did anyone check with the DRA on Article 22 that that's the right language?
22?
So
And the short from the forest fund?
Yeah. Did anyone check that that's the right language?
yeah, so the piece is that actually I did track with DRA and said that they can't give me any guidance other than a blank templated format. And then once the article has been approved here, then we can go and seek guidance from DRA. But it was based on their template and then what we did.
Language from them.
Correct.
Can we take the motion and add on the floor?
Motion on 24.
Yeah, she motioned, I seconded.
Yeah.
Vote?
Yes.
It's Kevin, correct, you're for 24?
Yeah. Well, because it doesn't, it's not the main feasibility study, this is, the votes you're saying that this is the town wants. Is this a direction the town wants to go? Yeah.
So you gave me a rejection?
Yeah, what do we want to do on that? Do you want to do a 5-minute break?
Can I just ask, in this day and age, I'm just curious, can we change it recommended by select board? Just brought up.
Susan, she's got to get more gender.
What she did, she took the last step and made the changes.
We're not going to go, we won't do that, no.
The budget committee has any question for?
So everybody has the revenue? Those revenues? Yeah, so we have the, it's also spreadsheet, but then we also have the handout.
Is it different from the spreadsheet?
I don't think so. There might be a couple little updates, but not from the most recent one. They sent that yesterday. Anything that we want to go over? Does the select board have any comments on the revenue?
Why would motor vehicle permits decrease, for example?
Motor vehicle permits?
Yeah. Are we going to have fewer automobiles in Kingston, is that?
People are buying new ones, so the value, they're getting less each year. Unless people buy new cars.
Yeah, it's still hard to get it in Pittsburgh.
It's difficult.
About half of this is a dice roll anyway.
Right, that's true. And I think they always try to underestimate too.
I'd rather be conservative than.
Yeah.
Buying a truck, another truck.
Permits could skyrocket if some of these projects go.
Don't worry, I'm keeping up that motor vehicle permit line, I think my last batch.
The only one tax bill, estimate, let's say you had the correct number in December, is this now the correct number? The actual?
For which one?
It's right.
Okay. So we're good for that? Okay, so take a vote to accept the revenue.
Projection, 2023 revenue projection.
I need to accept the projection.
Okay, we have a second.
Second, if
All in favor? All right, so we have gone through our warrant articles. Thank you all for coming. Remember that Saturday, February 4th, 9 a.m. Is the deliberative session. Budget committee will be in place to finish up our regular meeting. So closing the hearing right now at 10:50. Thank you.
Say the deliberative again?
February 4th.
That's better.
Yeah, so we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll finish up.
Are we still having more?
I don't know if we did. We have minutes to accept from last time.
Well, the things have done. Yeah, because it's just, because the board is selected.
Okay, so just a couple notes. The period to sign up to run for office is coming up. I know there's a couple people that their terms are up. I hope that you're going to run again. And then also for anybody who's listening out there, if you want to join the budget committee, we would certainly love to have you. So we have a couple of open positions.
Whose terms are expiring?
You're going to put me on the spot like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have one that's rerunning, and two that's running.
My term is done, I don't want to
I would like to strongly encourage.
Are you running again?
I haven't decided.
And we have to sign up by the end of January.
In January, and I'm not sure what the dates are, but they're right at the term clerk's office, is what you said, 25th of January. So we received the minutes from the last meeting, where we voted on all the budget line items. So we need to approve those.
Motion to approve the minutes from the previous.
All in favor?
And I would just urge other people, there's going to be openings, there's obviously people running for select board, there are people planning board openings, CBA openings. So there's other openings, if you're not having enough fun, we can create more fun. Well,
Trustees and
Trustees, the library trustees.
yeah, all kinds of
positions.
All kinds of ways to spend your time. Your life.
Supervisor, was like that 6 years, you get it, it's 6 years.
It's exciting.
That's really hard.
Yeah, it's just like being senator,
Just a slightly different salary. All right, so deliberative session, February 4th, and we can adjourn. 11 o'clock.
motion to adjourn.